We're going to jump into a little bit more of theory, brand theory. So
Okay.
I know this was a question that I got from also David, same big book that he wrote for questions for us.
Okay.
And when it comes to brand identity, I think the hardest part for people when they're trying to come up with their brand is their brand. What is their brand identity going to be?
Right.
I know I went through this a lot when I was coming up with the show. First, it was called the EIG podcast because England Insurance Group, and I was going to make it an offshoot of England Insurance Group to get myself promotion. But I'm like, dude, no one knows who EIG is. Why are you saying these acronyms? They don't make sense.
Right.
Then it was just called the Dylan England podcast. Well, then I was like, well, the podcast, it's not just a podcast because there's other things we're doing too.
Right.
So when it comes to brand identity, what is important for people to think through before they even make their first post as they're thinking through things when it comes to coming up with their brand?
Right. I think you have to put yourself in the mindset of the audience that you're speaking to. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, what's more important for me? Do I need to do something that has less barriers and it's going to be easy? Or am I trying to create something strategically that's going to make sense for the platforms that I'm planning to live on? And so depending on what you choose will kind of help you decide on the brand identity piece, right? If I'm thinking about it strategically, I'm thinking, okay, people respond to personal content more than they respond to anything, right? So that means your name or something that immediately connects them to you as an individual, which is going to give you faster organic growth. If you come up with initials or something that doesn't connect them to you and you compare that to something that's connected to a person, the personal brand or the personal connection is going to always grow faster, right? So I think those are things that should be considered, especially when you're starting from scratch. You got to think about, from a strategy standpoint and from a platform standpoint, what's going to give you the biggest opportunity to grow. If you're thinking about it from a long-term standpoint and like, I know this is going to be successful, and once I've grown 100,000 followers, or my audience is amassed to 1 million listeners, who do I want to be known as at that point, right? And if you aren't comfortable with, say, that being your name or a certain brand that you've come up with, then you might want to reconsider the starting point.
Yeah, that's good advice. Follow-up question with that. What happens when the listener is working at a company and they're the brand manager for their company? How would you recommend that? Because that person can't put their own name on their company branding, for example.
Right.
How would you recommend someone that's thinking through their branding for their employment to go on social media? Because I'm telling you, man, I have 160 companies I work with for insurance, and probably 100 of them don't do branding at all on social media. They're hiring brand managers for the first time, and the brand manager's like, I don't know where to start.
Right. Well, I think if you have an employer, you are working on behalf of the employer, right? So if your employer isn't cool with you doing things for yourself to try to help the company brand, then that's the box that you're playing in, unfortunately. And now you have to be in complete representation of the employer that you represent, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Like, especially if that employer is a big name, now I'm thinking about it differently. Is how do I leverage the credibility that this employee has to redirect some of that attention back to myself if I do want to eventually do something of my own? It's actually a great spot to be in, and a lot of people might look at it as like a roadblock or negatively, but at the end of the day, the big employers are going to have established brand recognition, whereas if you're just starting out, you have, a couple hundred followers or whatever. I would leverage the heck out of it because people are naturally inquisitive, right? So it's like, who is this Dylan guy that's doing a podcast for Aflac? Like, or who is this guy doing a podcast for Aflac? I'm just as a hypothetical example. And now it just immediately creates intrigue. Like, I want to go and find out who the guy is that's doing a podcast. He's actually really good. So I would kind of like flip that scenario and see how I can leverage it to my advantage.
That's helpful. Yeah, I think if you're a listener here and you're working for a company, the question is your company big enough that you can utilize the credibility of that company
Yep.
to help promote it on social media, testimonials,
Yeah.
things like that, that people will be like, oh, wow. Because if there's not a personal name attached to it, some generic, like, blah, blah, blah's landscaping,
Yep.
what sets apart blah, blah, blah's landscaping, then how can you share that on social media, right?
100%. But then if it's a company that doesn't have brand recognition, now you're still treating it like it's your company. Like
Yeah.
that's the
There
idea.
you go. That's a great
Make that
point.
company your company. And then I took so and so landscaping from 10 followers to 10,000 followers
Yeah.
through my own personal podcast or through whatever. Now you have to reframe that as this is your project, your baby that you're then going to be able to leverage in the future as a resume piece for things that you've accomplished.
Yeah, that's really helpful. So if you're a brand manager for a company, I think you need to have a conversation with your employer and say, hey, if I'm going to be able to do my job well for you, I need to treat this like it's my own company.
Yep.
And I need a little bit of freedom
Yep.
to do this.
Yep.
And I want you to tell me what your idea is. I want to listen. I want to emulate that, but I need to have my own personal flair on this or it's not going to work.
That's it.
And that's a really good point. So
Yeah.
if you are a brand manager, I know we have a couple that are going to watch this podcast because they told me to let me know when it comes out.
Yep.
That's your answer.
It's
That's good.
interesting. Just to add on to that, I'm in the process of going into a few companies, very large, successful companies that have pushed back historically on social media use and their employees using social, even being connected to the company because they want to kind of have control of what that looks
Sure.
like. And I'm coming in because they're trying to move in a different direction, and they're trying to understand a way to communicate what's acceptable and what's not acceptable by the employees when they do things across their platforms.
To tie back to the brand.
To tie back to the
Understand.
brand,
Okay.
right? So I think as a brand manager, showing the initiative that you are trying to put framework in place that allows employees, leadership teams, people in a position that can bring positive attention to the company. If you can create that or assist in creating that, like you put yourself in a very, very, a really good position, because if your company's not doing it,
Yeah.
they should be and they need to. And very soon they're going to realize like we're behind the 8 ball.
Yeah.
And when they do, they're going to think about who was trying to create this for us already. And you kind of already have a jump on that.
Yeah, it's almost like allowing, if I'm understanding you correctly, it's almost like as a business owner, instead of putting your employees in a box, like a small, tiny box, you're widening the box. Maybe you're not.
You have
providing
all
a
these
box.
brand ambassadors you're not even using.
You're not leveraging their personalities
Correct.
to then help promote your brand.
Correct.
And what it sounds like is I think a lot of employers are scared of their brand being tarnished
Yep.
by something on social media. So I could understand why there would still be guidelines, but maybe you need to loosen them a little bit
Yeah.
and allow your you hired your employee for a reason because you liked them and you thought they were going to help your company.
Yep.
Why wouldn't you want that same personality that you enjoy working with
Yep.
to other people to see that personality too?
Yep. That's it. You
Yeah, I
got
love
it.
that.
You
Cool.
got it.
Quick learner, brother.
I see.
Quick learner.
I see.
All right. Negative. Last question.
Okay.
What is the most common reason you see people fail on social media?
The most common reason people fail is two reasons I think that are very equal. Either they don't have the ability to stay consistent, they burn out or they get tired, or two, they are trying to create a perfect presentation when no one's actually perfect. They're scared to be vulnerable. They're scared to be them real selves. They're scared to let people see who they really are. And because of that, it's impossible to keep up with the perfect content that they're trying to put out.
Yeah.
Those are probably like the two main reasons I see people either fall off or, I don't consider anything a fail. I consider it, a pause or a roadblock, that can still be learned from if managed successfully. But yeah, like those are two of the biggest reasons I see for lack of success though.
Yeah, and I think to kind of help add to that, just for my own working through that, because I'm perfectionist. I want to make quality content. right? And everyone here wants to have quality Instagram stories and quality posts and quality, but the only way to get there is to be consistent,
Well,
right?
well, no, actually, I think it's impossible to be perfect. And I think perfection is a cover up for insecurity.
Mm,
And I think sometimes because we're insecure or not sure or not confident in the content that we create, we position it as it's not good enough when really it is good enough. And it's also better
yeah,
because our audience grows with us,
yeah,
right? So
yep.
if it's not perfect to you or it's not good enough for you,
Mm,
but you are trying to basically dictate or say what your audience wants to see when in reality you don't know, right? Like the
until you
market
post,
decides
exactly.
until you
Yeah,
post. So a piece of content that you put out that you don't feel is great, that you feel is, lacking in whatever way, may be the piece of content that blows you up and
yeah,
goes viral, and you don't know until you actually put it out there. And so I would say 80-20 rule. If it's 80% good, post it. 70% good, post it. For me, it's like 50%. Like
yeah.
if I'm 50% okay with it, it's getting posted.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's helpful. I mean, um, I think a lot of people go in these up and downs. Like, I'm really going to post a lot, and then I didn't see the results, so I back off a little
Yeah.
bit in this cycle. So just being consistent, and
Yeah.
then
Cover up the data.
yeah, and just
Like
be real.
honestly, like literally,
Mm,
like you think about a treadmill and you're going to run and you don't want to see the time, you put the towel over it, like put a towel over the data and head down and literally just post it. Don't worry about the results.
dude.
And then in 3 months, like look up. 6 months, look up. Guarantee if you just post as much as you possibly can and not worry about what results come
Yeah.
from it, guarantee you're going to 10 times whatever you're
Oh,
currently
dude, you're
doing
so
now.
right. It's so hard though. I'm so bad. I'm so
I
bad
see
at
the anxiety,
like
do you see it rushing to his face?
oh my gosh, because I'm so bad at I post a YouTube video and it's like refresh, 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 like you, and it's
Yeah.
so bad. I know it's bad, guys. I know it's bad for me, but it's like you want it to do well so bad.
Yeah.
But you're right, man. Like
Yeah. Gotta let loose.
learning to just post, and sure, 2 months down the line, you want to look and see what worked.
Yeah.
You want to repeat certain
Yeah.
things,
And
but
that's also a different action,
yeah,
right?
then just
You are using your analytics to improve yourself over time.
mhm.
But to refresh and refresh and refresh is a little bit of obsessive compulsive disorder.
I think a lot of it. I
And
think
you told me I
a
was
lot
okay.
of
You
it.
told me it was okay for me to be an ego right
I'm
here.
ready, buddy. I'm
So
ready,
so
brother.
I am talking very much in an ego voice because I believe you can handle it.
I'm ready, brother.
But I'm telling you, like I wouldn't say this to everybody, but I am telling you that based on what you do, if you just eliminated the idea of being good,
Yeah,
you are trying to be Joe Rogan today.
right.
And it's not going to happen, right? So if you eliminated that and you just put your head down and literally just created as much possible content as you can without so much emphasis on the perfection of the content, you're going to blow up so fast.
Mm.
But if you keep paying attention to it,
Yeah.
you're not going to
It's
blow
gonna
up
eat me up,
nowhere
man.
near
It's
as
gonna-
fast.
it's gonna eat
and,
up.
and on top
Yeah.
of that, you're going to create stress and anxiety
Yeah.
and pressure and all these things, right? So
And that's probably where people fall off, right?
100%.
That's where the fail comes in.
100%.
Yeah.
You have a timetable in your head that you've created for yourself. No one expects you to do that.
Yeah.
That is your own expectation. And if you don't meet your own expectation, you're going to decide that you're not doing it no more or that this isn't for you. Same thing that you've probably done with the sales thing and the numbers that you
Sure.
expect to hit.
Yeah.
But these are all your own expectations. Like there's no penalty if you don't hit those things,
Yeah.
right? So I think I talked about this on the live like not too long ago, and it was me deciding to play in a men's basketball league a couple weeks ago, right? And I think we talked right before I went
Yeah,
into the
you
league.
did.
There was a draft that was happening the week before, and I went into the draft. I haven't played basketball in over a year, right? I haven't been working out. I haven't been running drills. I haven't been doing things to prepare for that. Yet and still, in my head, I'm going to be the #1 draft pick. Like, I created that expectation for myself. So now I go out there, and because I'm so locked in on being the absolute best player in the gym, I play horrible.
Of course.
But I did that to myself. Like, no one cared. Like, it was just me saying, this is what I expect to do. And realistically, I've done nothing to put myself in a position to achieve that. So I use that as an example to say so many of our anxiety-related issues and our stresses and the things that come are so self-induced. Yeah. And they are not correlated with happiness and joy and peace and all the things that we actually desire that are real measures of success. You know what I'm saying? So I just feel your passion for this is unique. And if you just focus in on the passion of it all, show the good, the bad, and the ugly of everything that you're going through as you journey into successful entrepreneurship, a successful podcast, I think all that content matters, and your listeners and your audience is going to appreciate you more for that because you gave us everything. Like you showed us the good days, the bad days, not just the successful interviews. You showed us the bad interviews and the ones that weren't good. And I think that's really the people who win. Last point, like if you think about your best influencers, I shouldn't say influencers because I hate the word influencer. Your most successful Instagram, social media personalities, believe it or not, are horrible business people. And they're horrible business people because they never set out to create businesses. They set out to make you laugh, to be funny, to entertain, to make great music. Their passion was what caused them to make art. And then the art just happened to be placed on these platforms. And it attracted a huge audience, which then forced them to become business people. The business people who want to create businesses and then decide that I'm going to use art or being funny or creating a podcast don't work. Yeah,
it's forced.
Because it's forced. Yeah, it's correct. A completely different mindset. So anyway, that's all. I'm going to get off my high horse.
No, that's great. And you didn't even realize it. We tied it right back into what we were talking about an hour ago, which is self-reflection.
Self-reflection.
It just keeps bubbling up.
Full circle. Man.
Dude, that's awesome.
Full circle stuff.
Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that clip. If you did enjoy that clip, please hit that like button and the subscribe button. It really helps the show out a lot. Just tells YouTube, hey, this is a show that people want to watch. So I'd appreciate if you did that for me. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you guys on the next clip.